You're watching Open Agenda. Here's our host, Joe Venosa.
Hi, welcome to Open Agenda. I'm your host this week, Joe Venosa. With us in the house, two regulars, Ms. Trish Melvin from Fruitland.
Hello.
Hello. And Mr. Mike Goldberg from Delmar.
Hey, hey.
Thank you for being here.
Of course.
So this week we are quite fortunate because we have a special guest, Mr. Cody Stevens, who is the president and CEO of the Anchor Initiative. And that is a local nonprofit that is dedicated to disability advocacy and awareness and services. And the reason why he's actually going to come on the show today is I actually had the pleasure of meeting him at the big rally that happened in North Salisbury this past week on February 28th. And what I'd like to do, if it's okay, is Mike, I'd like to bring Cody in and talk a bit about the issues, and then afterward, can we bring you back on and sort of get your take on his advocacy and also your take on the nature of the state cuts to the DDA services and funding?
Absolutely. It'd be my pleasure.
Fantastic. Trish, you okay sticking around?
Yes.
Stick around. We'll be right back with our next segment of Open Agenda. Welcome back to Open Agenda from Fruitland, Ms. Trish Melvin.
Hello.
Thanks for being with us. And a very special guest from Hurlock, Maryland, Mr. Cody Stevens.
How you doing?
Doing well. Thank you for being here. And now we actually met at a rally this past Saturday in Salisbury. And of course, I come to find out that you are the president and CEO of the Anchor Initiative.
Yes.
Can you maybe talk a little bit about, well, let me back up for a second because the public may have heard that there was a really big rally in Salisbury on Saturday off of West Gordy Road in regards to some potential funding cuts for the Department of DDS, right?
DDA. Mm-hmm.
DDA, sorry.
That's okay.
And that has an enormous impact on local communities and families that have loved ones with severe disabilities and particular kinds of care that they would require.
Sure.
So these cuts are going to impact a lot of people, potentially.
Yeah.
But in meeting you at the rally, I also found out more about the nonprofit that you've established, which is, of course, tied into advocacy.
Yes.
So can we talk for a few minutes about the Anchor Initiative and then maybe go back to the rally and the broader trends in Annapolis that we're concerned about?
Sure. Yeah. So the Anchor Initiative kind of came out. It was based on personal experience. We are a board of 5, and 4 of the 5 of us have family members with disabilities. The other is very smart with treasury and money, and so yes, and obviously an avid supporter. So we connected under the vision that we all had the same feeling that in the area, especially in the area that we're in, the disability community, when it comes to things like resources and awareness, and really just to be able to have a solid voice, that there's just a lot that could be done in that arena. And so we're like, well, what can we do? And so the idea of the Anchor Initiative was to really anchor down on the accessibility and the resources that are available to people here on the shore. We know in most cases, in many different areas, that the Eastern Shore sometimes they kind of get their information secondhand, because of the disconnect with Annapolis. Mm. And so that's why we really wanted to make it a point and a major focus of awareness and advocacy with the Anchor Initiative, because we want to be able to take that voice to Annapolis with issues like what we were just talking about. Mm. But with that, it grew. We knew that we wanted to have a resource hub because people didn't, a lot of people have the same consideration that they believe that we do have resources, but they're very limited and the options are kind of scarce. Mm-hmm. And so we want people not only to have the list of what is available, but we want to be able to bring more to the shore, as well as help them to achieve and be able to obtain the current resources that are available to them. Mm-hmm. So it's not just the advocacy part. We want to be able to help families achieve the different resources that they need. Mm-hmm. And then there's the education side of it too. We don't just want to, educate the public on different needs, but we want to be able to educate participants, those with disabilities who, hold a job or have a job, have aspirations that they want to achieve. We want to help them to achieve that. So we do things like resume building, public speaking classes, things like that. So we really, just in every way, from every angle, really just want to support the disability community here on the shore.
Yeah, it seems like it's a really holistic and yet grassroots effort to build all these things in the community. And that's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like the Eastern Shore is a little bit underserved compared to the rest of the state in this area. How broad of a geographic area are you working in?
We are focused on the entire Eastern Shore. We are currently building a volunteer base. Our goal, and we're still working it up, is to have representation in every county. At this point, the home base is Dorchester County, where I am. But the 5 board members, we have one in Ocean City, we have one in Salisbury. Myself is in Hurlock. I have another family member that's actually also just outside of Hurlock, and then one in Queen Anne's County.
Okay.
We do have volunteers up as far as Elkton at this point, and so we're really just trying to expand our reach and get the shore served in its entirety. And honestly, there are other parts of the state that could benefit from this too. You have the Western Shore, that's also a very rural area, and are struggling with some of the same issues. Sure. And so, in time, if we grow and it seems to be productive, we're not opposed to growing ourselves.
At the state level, maybe. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Good.
And what would you say has been the general response from the community as they've been made aware of the Anchor Initiative and what you're doing, and also how you're getting out there more in the community, like at Saturday's rally? What's been that like?
It's been a very positive buzz. I can say that. Anytime that we mention, the Anchor Initiative, people inquire kind of, well, what are we trying to, accomplish? We'll give them one of the brochures here, and we'll talk just kind of basically about it. And the intention is to really show just what is available, and let people know that not only are these things available, we want to help you.
It's always remarkable to me, I talk about this a lot too, having a special needs child who's autistic. A lot of families don't seem to really have firm footing, after a diagnosis, even if they know what the condition is.
Sure.
There's a kind of isolation that happens, especially when you feel disempowered and you're not in an area where it's very visible.
Yeah.
And I think one of the positives of having these kinds of initiatives is and I think we saw that at the rally on Saturday, is,
sure.
You saw, I think it was more than 130 people showed up at a certain point, with families and loved ones and friends, and you do get a sense of other people that are experiencing these different challenges, and it builds, again, not just a sense of community, but I think it reassures families, right, that they're really not alone in
sure.
a particular challenge.
Sure, and that's definitely a major focus in all of this. You mentioned the rally, between the delegates and senators that arrived, which, if I can preface, we put that event together in 10 days.
Yeah. And if I can just say,
yeah.
I mean, you did an amazing job. You got some heavy hitters in that room,
yeah.
and you got them from across the political spectrum,
yeah.
from the right to the left and everywhere in between. People came out for, I think, a phenomenal cause and really rallied
yeah.
in a way like I've never seen for a cause. I mean, some of the personalities in that room,
yeah.
just for them to be in the same room, to me was a remarkable feat. But then to have them all advocate from different angles was, I think, really touching.
Yeah, it was definitely there was this atmosphere of unification in the room. There definitely was. It was amazing. By the time it was all said and done, we did have a sign-up sheet, but there was another back door that we didn't get everybody to sign up in. By the time it was all said and done, we had roughly 200 people in the room.
Oh, wow.
And what was amazing about it is, especially the families, and you and I have talked, when we talked at the event, we hinted towards this, was that when you have the diagnosis, I can say for my son, when we first got his diagnosis, we had this big long name, polymicrogyria. That's his diagnosis. And we're like, what in the world is that?
That's a lot of
and
letters.
How do you spell it? Like, we had no idea. And over time, we had to learn this. And what's amazing is, regardless of how many people were in that room, somebody at some point in that room felt that. Everybody's had that moment. There's this new diagnosis. I don't know what to do with it. I don't even know where to start or who to talk to.
Right.
And we, with the Anchor Initiative, we want to curve that. We want to say, if there is something, call us. Yeah. Let's get that process started.
Yeah.
And I agree with you with the rally. It was definitely, there was this unifying atmosphere. We had everybody from all angles. And like I said, we put it together in 10 days, and we had 6 delegates and 2 senators in the room. Yeah. And from different sides of the aisle who were speaking the same language from the podium.
Plus the sheriff too.
And the sheriff, yep. And we had local executives there. It was amazing to see the unification in it. And I think it was really important for these officials to hear the stories of the families. It made it personal. Yeah. And I think that's what we needed.
Yeah. And And obviously, of course, the rally took place because of events in Annapolis.
Yeah.
Can you maybe, for the public, if they haven't heard about it, can you maybe explain briefly why there is concern right now about what's going on with the state budget regarding services?
Sure. So on the state level, of course we had the new budget plan that has recently been released, and in that plan, the actual number is about $155 million from the state budget that is going to be taken from the Developmental Disabilities Administration. Now, the Developmental Disabilities Administration is basically the largest resource option in the state for those with disabilities. And so when you're cutting that kind of funding, that's extremely significant. That's a big cut. And what happens is, anytime that whether it be a cut or it be an advance or a positive, you give extra money, then usually the federal government will match that however it goes. So if there's a $155 million cut, we're now actually talking about $310 million.
Right.
And
so it's double whatever it's going to be.
Correct. Yeah. And then from there, what happens is, the governor hands that down to the DDA, and then the DDA says, okay, well, where can we put these cuts into place? And a lot of the places they've chose are devastating. They have chosen a cap number where basically if someone has a significant need, it can't go over a certain financial number. They have an exemption plan for that, but there's been no information about that. They are planning on cutting their wages or their rate settings almost in half. We're looking at, if this goes through, direct care support with people that have been trained in CPR, first aid, behavioral training, certified med techs, going to be making less than what you can make at your local Dunkin' Donuts.
So the people that we rely on to help the most vulnerable, that have the specialized training and these most essential duties, would have a cut where they would essentially be earning less money than working at Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah, at any fast food restaurant. And what's amazing is, in preparation of these cuts, because should this go through the way that it sits, the cuts will take place July 1st. In preparation for these cuts,
They're cutting.
people are already leaving.
I've seen videos already online of people saying that.
Yeah, people are already losing their staff because the support staff have family of their own that they need to support, and they can't do it on that kind of wage. They just can't do it, and it's not their fault. It's not the family's fault. Unfortunately, this is where we are. So it's rough.
Yeah.
So what's next? When will you get more information about where this whole situation stands before July?
Yeah, well, there's a big process to it. I mean, legislative session goes into April.
Yeah.
And we have already had the budget hearings regarding the DDA on both the House and the Senate.
Yeah.
There have been some protective bills that some of our representatives have put out that are very positive, that I think will help us in kind of the world of accountability for the DDA. So we're very happy about that. Unfortunately, at this point, we're kind of at a waiting period. But we're encouraging people, and if people, that are watching, we're part of the rally, you heard us say it there, don't stop now.
Yeah.
Make sure you're contacting your representatives. Call them, email them.
That was my next question was, what can the average person, whether they're in Wycomico County or anywhere else and they're watching and they want to take action, what is the most effective action that they can take?
Yeah, at this point, I'll preface it with this. I always say, based on statistics, that 1 in 6 people have a disability, which means every one of us somewhere knows someone that's affected by this, and so we encourage you to connect with them, but we also encourage you to connect with your local representatives. Whoever is in the General Assembly right now in the state for your district, get in touch with them. Let them know that you've heard of this cut, that you've heard of the effect that it's going to make on the disability community, and write them, call them, voicemail, whatever the case. The great news about it is when you contact them, every phone call and every email is documented. So it will be heard, it will be listened, it will be read. But encourage them to oppose these cuts, and not just to oppose the cuts, but to help the advocates that have been going back and forth to Annapolis create safeguards against the opportunity that the DDA can do this again later.
Yeah, because this happened last year.
It did.
Yeah. And luckily those cuts were restored. But it's like every session, it seems we're fighting these decisions in Annapolis against the most vulnerable.
Correct. Yeah. And that was the thing, a lot of the representatives this year, they were all like, you're back. you're back. And when it comes down to it, it's that they're equally, honestly, as frustrated because I guess they don't understand it. Because when you're looking at a $70+ billion budget,
Yeah.
respectfully, what is $155 million?
Yeah.
But it has to come from disabilities. Like,
Yeah. Of all the things to
and
cut.
there's no answer to why.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. And so, and you mentioned last year, the cuts were restored, but a lot of the policies that the DDA was going to put into place expecting those cuts, they still pressed forward. And so cuts were still made. And there's even though the money came in, there was still a major effect of that. And what we're seeing now is a lot of the same. There was an amendment that came out just yesterday that was stating that they're still trying to push these proposed intentions forward. So we need safeguards.
So we really have to not only educate the public, but then keep the pressure on as much as we can.
Correct.
So that's well, that's great. And I guess one of the other things, maybe to bring it back to what other people can do beyond the current issues in Annapolis,
Sure.
We had talked a little bit about the idea of encouraging volunteerism and people to maybe step up to help within the Anchor Initiative.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about sort of like internship programs or mentorship. Can you maybe explain that just?
Yeah. So it's kind of a combination, and we're in the process of working on it. We are requesting that if anybody's interested in volunteering with the Anchor Initiative and anything I'm about to say, you can email us info@anchorinitiative.org. But what we want to do is have volunteers from a couple of different angles. We do have different committees that are dedicated. One is awareness and advocacy, which we've been talking about. The education and employment. If you're willing to work with families and or willing to take certifications to be able to train classes in the public, we want to be able to do that. One of the really exciting things about that is we just partnered up with the Epilepsy Foundation, and they want to help us basically train trainers to go out into the Eastern Shore and train for epilepsy awareness. So that's a big thing. Of course, we do have a fundraising committee because a nonprofit needs support.
Yeah.
But the big thing that we really want to drive is that we have we have our volunteer group where there's going to be many things that you can do to help us grow and expand our reach. You can work directly with families to help them connect with support, and we can teach you how to do that. The other side of this is we have what's called the ambassadorship program, which I think is really exciting. And what that allows people to do, and we encourage people with disabilities to sign up for the ambassadorship program, is to go out to connect with us, hear all the information that Anchor has to offer, and go back out into the community, spread the message that we're here, that we're trying to help. And in turn, that gives them public speaking, that gets them kind of out of their comfort zone, and it allows them to strengthen themselves too.
That's wonderful. That's again, I think a lot of families that haven't been aware of these kinds of initiatives are really going to benefit from it. And so I'm glad that even though the circumstances right now, because of Annapolis, are not good, you're also getting the chance, because you're advocating, to build local awareness about what is happening, here, regardless.
Yeah.
If you want to check out the general website, it's www.anchorinitiative.org, and email is info@anchorinitiative.org.
Yep. And if you want to reach me personally, I'm completely fine with it. I do my best to try to respond as quickly as I can. It's Cody@anchorinitiative.org. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Mr. Cody, we're really grateful that you could be on here to help us out, inform the public, and again, advocate for those that need the most advocating.
Sure.
Trish, thanks for being with us.
You're welcome.
And thank you for being with us. And stick around. We'll be right back with our next segment of Open Agenda. Welcome back to Open Agenda. With us again is Miss Trish Melvin from Fruitland. Well, thanks again. And our professional note-taker from Delmar, Mr. Mike Goldberg.
If only I were functionally literate, I could use this for something.
2 out of 3 ain't bad, right? Welcome back, sir. So we had quite the interview with Mr. Cody Stevens. Sounds like he's doing a lot of good work in the community. What did you think of his overall discussion?
This is a tough issue for me. It really is. My heart really goes out to those of you who are dealing with special needs children.
And adults too.
Well, and I would also add that as special as these children are, I think the parents who are giving them the love and the care that they need are also very special people. Not having a special needs child, it's a little hard to get my head around this. It really is. It's very expensive, and it raises a number of questions that, frankly, at this juncture, I don't know the answer to. And I would start off with, what type of training is required, formal training is required for caregivers to be able to provide care, either one-on-one in the home or at the institutional level. And I don't know the answer to that. Perhaps you do.
Well, and again, I think part of the challenge with even the answer is that it varies. If you have, for example, family members who have severe epilepsy, there's a different kind of training involved than, let's say, somebody who might have a certain kind of autism diagnosis or Rett syndrome or, a variety of other conditions. And I think that's kind of the problem, is that these programs have a balancing challenge, right? Which is, you're trying to fund people with different conditions and different issues, and that means that you're dealing with institutions to help mitigate that. And when you have these kind of cuts, it makes flexibility, it makes access, it makes the specific kinds of training that's needed all the more difficult to get, because you end up dealing with paperwork, bureaucratic inertia, and then of course the fact that, as Cody was saying, when you even have state officials last year who tried to cut, but the cuts were restored, they still put it on a track where the planned cuts are there. So you have personnel that are maybe going to jump ship and go to a different line of work because they can't depend on it. That's the other thing, right, is that if you're somebody who's a professional caregiver who's going to homes to help with whether they're, people that are severely disabled or have certain conditions, and you know that these cuts are coming or that they're going to come every year, the incentive is probably to find maybe a better line of work where you know that your job is not at risk all the time. So there's also just residual damage that's happening. And that's, to some extent, incalculable. And that's, I think, a deep concern that a lot of people in the disability community have.
And I haven't read extensively on this. I have just a very peripheral understanding of it. But from some of the information that I've read recently, indicates that some of the caregivers are actually extraordinarily well paid. In fact, I saw one article where it suggested that some of the caregivers actually make more than the governor of the state of Maryland makes. I don't know if that's true or not. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But, if you're talking six figures, with overtime for a job that may not necessarily require an advanced degree. I mean, again, I just don't know.
Well, a lot of a lot of those jobs are people with nursing degrees, they're clinicians. You got to remember too, a lot of and it's kind of like with traveling nurses, a lot of the specialized care that people do get, especially on the shore, are people that have to come over from the Western Shore because we just don't have the resources and the personnel. So there's a whole variety of different kinds, but the average wages that, again, to Cody's point, is that like the average caregivers that are doing the kind of work locally are making pretty much, what people at Dunkin' Donuts make.
So it's a minimum wage job.
For most of them, it's certainly not a livable wage. It might not be minimum, but it's certainly close, at least in the context of local cost of living.
So consequently, you're not going to get the best possible care, for...
Well, correct. Or any care if people are not willing to step up. We've had these conversations before with like a lot of the EMTs, right, that work for the county, right, is, you have a job that's essential and so important, but you're certainly not paying them in a way that's commensurate to that importance.
Right.
And in a lot of ways, I think you see it with this too. And it'll be interesting to see what happens regarding the budget negotiations, to see what is restored, what's not restored. But it, like Cody had said, they fought this battle before, and it seems like every year they have to continue to do that. And that's not a good place to be when you're trying to advocate for your own family, for others' families. Like, what the Anchor Initiative is doing is phenomenal, but it shouldn't have to be their job to also hold rallies to bring the sheriff of Wicomico, local state senators, council people. That's really not their job. I mean, yes, advocacy is important, but you shouldn't have to be fighting that battle on top of all these other things. And, to me, that's really where there's a lot of anger and disgust about the whole nature of it, because, again, there's that old expression that budgets are moral documents. Well, if you believe that, then this is a highly immoral act, at least as it's been presented.
And the timing of this, I mean, we're facing Medicaid cuts, and meanwhile, the cost of anything medical related or institutional related is through the roof. So the plan is to reduce funds while the expenses increase.
Yeah, and to that point, even though you didn't maybe mean it in this way, I want to go back to that word institution, because what a lot of people fear, and you hear this from a lot of families, and the people that I know that have loved ones that have particular conditions that do require a lot of care, often round-the-clock care, is there's a real fear that what's going to happen is that you're going to have, because of both federal and now especially state actions happening, is that there's a concern that we're going back to an era where people's default will be to put people in institutions because these families can't care for them on their own anymore. And I'll say this, there's one city council member that I've, had a less than cordial relationship with in the past, but my heart goes out to her for what she experiences with her son and what she talks about and advocates, because she's absolutely right. When you don't have the ability to take care of your loved one in-house, you run the risk of having to send them to a place. And we know there's endless studies. I teach this in my history classes when we talk about the disability rights movement. The quality and lifespan of people in institutions is always going to be shorter and less because you're not in a home environment. I come from Staten Island. Google Willowbrook Home for Boys. It's one of the pinch points of the disability rights story because of what those conditions were. And so ultimately, I think this is an issue that we have to keep an eye on and see if this advocacy can succeed.
One of the problems to me is that it's an expensive proposition, and money is always a limited resource. And here in Maryland, under our current fiscal circumstances, it's particularly problematic. And this is not something that affects most of the population. It's a relatively small segment of the population that are directly affected. And as much as my heart goes out to them, and it truly does, again, the funding is limited. And if you're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on this, that money's got to come from somewhere. So that means, particularly in times of fiscal crisis that we're entering into, you either have to cut money from somewhere else, or you're going to have to increase revenues, which means raising taxes. And ultimately the taxpayers are going to bear the burden. And not everybody is going to be, sympathetic to it as perhaps I am, or those of you who are, in fact, directly affected. I'm not sure how we overcome that.
Well, there's a human condition challenge there with just perspective. That is a challenge. I think I'll just go to Cody's point. In a $70 billion plus budget, 155 is not a huge amount in context. And so I guess the question is, if you're going to cut, why there? But to your point, we'll see what happens as this develops.
But even though it's 150 million here or 300 million when you consider the federal funding that won't be received, there's also a lot of other imperatives that are perhaps equally as important. And it depends. If it affects me, it's important to me. If it affects you, it's going to be more important to you. So the money's going to have to come
if it
from
affected
somewhere.
You, it would be important to me too, though.
Well, and as it is with you, I mean, that's why I'm sitting here today, because I am concerned, and I have some idea of the challenges that you deal with, and I'm in awe of you every day. The amount of love and effort and time that you put in to your child. It's a lot. I don't know if I could deal with that myself. I don't know if I would.
That's why you got more hair than me.
Yeah. So it's again, I think the parents are very special. I'd love to see these kids get as much help as possible, but money is a limited resource, and I'm not sure how we play that game of where to allocate that taxpayer money.
Well, I think we're going to find out soon enough, because the budget season is in full swing. Well, thank you both for being here. It was a very educational, I think, experience, and we will keep the public updated as time goes on.
Terrific.
Yep. Thanks for watching this week's episode of Open Agenda. We'll see you back very soon. Take care.